Welcome to Disanalysis, everyone. Today, we are diving into a really tangled, incredibly complex web of global diplomacy, military strategy, and economics that is literally unfolding right now on the world stage. We're looking at a situation where a super delicate agreement between major global powers is being stress tested by regional conflicts. And the ripple effects, well, they could eventually reach every single one of us. It's a truly fascinating, high-stakes scenario involving the US, Iran, Israel, and Lebanon. So let's get right into it. Okay, let's kick things off with the absolute biggest question on the minds of global economists right now. Is the Strait of Hormuz really closed? Now you might be thinking, why does this one specific waterway matter so much? Well, this geographical choke point might seem far away, but it has immense implications for the global economy. I mean, a massive percentage of the entire world's oil flows right through this narrow stretch of water. It's like a vital artery. So any disruption here doesn't just make for flashy headlines. It directly impacts global energy security, manufacturing, and eventually the cost of the goods you and I buy every single day.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the glaring, stark contrast in the reporting. On the left side, we've got Iran's official claim. They recently came out and announced that they have closed the strait, basically saying that the commitments made in a recent memorandum of understanding have been fundamentally broken. But look at the right side. The United States officially claims the exact opposite. American officials are stating, no, commercial traffic is still moving, our operations are totally normal, and the U.S. Navy is actively monitoring the area to prevent any kind of blockade. We are literally watching two completely opposing narratives clash in real time.
So to understand why Iran's claim is causing so much global anxiety right now, we kind of have to look at their actual capabilities in the region. Because while the U.S. Navy is heavily present and totally committed to keeping that route open, Iran possesses a formidable and highly disruptive arsenal. We're talking about naval mines, which, by the way, are incredibly cheap but terrifyingly effective. They also use these fast attack boats operated by the IRGC that can essentially swarm and hit tankers directly, plus they have anti-ship missiles and a whole network of surveillance drones. If they actually decide to deploy this arsenal, it is more than capable of severely choking off this critical trade route. Part 1. The U.S.-Iran deal. A temporary pause. To really grasp the current threat in the strait, we've got to look at the diplomatic root cause here, a very fragile Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, between the United States and Iran. And we need to be clear, this was never meant to be a permanent fix. It was designed strictly as a temporary pause. Just look at how this timeline builds. It kicked off on day 0 when the temporary MOU was actually signed. That instantly triggered this critical observation and de-escalation window lasting exactly 59 days. The whole purpose of this window? Just prevent a direct war and stabilize the region. If, and it's a big F, peace holds through this period, it all culminates on day 60 with permanent talks over in Switzerland. 60 days. That is the massive number we need to focus on right now. It's this exact fleeting window of time that the world has to basically hold its breath before those permanent talks can actually happen to determine the fate of the entire region. Everything right now is just a dead sprint against the 60-day clock. So the crucial point is understanding what this MOU was actually trying to achieve in those 60 days. And honestly, the core goals were incredibly ambitious. They wanted to reduce overall regional tension, physically prevent a direct war between the U.S. and Iran, which is huge, restore maritime security in hotspots like the Strait, figure out what happens to Iran's nuclear program, and ultimately stabilize global oil markets. Just getting this piece of paper signed was a monumental task. The political pressure was intense just to get both sides to agree to a temporary timeout. Part 2. The Hezbollah Catalyst. Breaking the deal? But as we all know, diplomacy doesn't happen in a vacuum. To really get the full picture, we need to look at Lebanon, and specifically Hezbollah. It is absolutely crucial to understand Hezbollah's role here. They are a Lebanon-based group, but, and this is key, they are distinct from the official Lebanese government. They are, however, heavily backed militarily by Iran. In fact, Iran views Hezbollah as its absolute most powerful regional proxy and a vital strategic deterrent. From Iran's perspective, Hezbollah exists to act as a shield, essentially forcing Israel to divide its resources and deterring potential Israeli attacks directly on Iranian soil. And that brings us to the recent violence that is threatening to tear this whole agreement apart. We've got conflicting reports emerging from the region once again. Lebanon has reported that 47 people were killed by recent Israeli strikes. On the flip side, Israel is reporting that 4 of its soldiers were killed by Hezbollah forces. This exact exchange of fire, this is what Iran views as a direct, blatant violation of the MOU. Because a core foundational understanding for Iran in that agreement was that attacks on Lebanon would completely cease. Listen to this sentiment from Iranian military leadership because it captures their perspective perfectly. Israel's action in Lebanon is a complete failure of the U.S. to maintain the deal's commitments. Because Iran views Hezbollah as this incredibly vital strategic asset, they perceive an attack on Hezbollah as a direct attack on themselves. They're essentially arguing that the U.S. completely failed to restrain its ally, Israel, and by doing so broke the promises made in that 60-day MOU. Part 3, Goals of Israel and Iran, a zero-sum game. Now, it's important to point out that Israel was never fully comfortable with this pause to begin with. From the Israeli perspective, a ceasefire like this just gives Hezbollah the time and space to regroup, rearm, and prepare for the next conflict. And this brilliantly illustrates why lasting peace is so incredibly difficult to achieve here. Just look at Israel's goals: eliminate Hezbollah, permanently remove the missile threat on its northern border, and reduce overall Iranian influence in the region. Now flip over and look at Iran's goals: protect Hezbollah at literally all costs, gain regional security guarantees, and remove those crippling economic sanctions. It is a textbook zero-sum game. What one side desperately wants, the other side strictly opposes. There's almost no middle ground.
Part 4, its impact on crude oil, the global economic reality. So how does a localized conflict on the border of Israel and Lebanon and a diplomatic dispute over a 60-day timeout actually connect back to your wallet? It all comes back to global energy markets. Look at this number, over $80 a barrel. You see, when the MOU was initially signed, crude oil prices were actually dropping. It looked like they might even dip below $70 or $75. But the absolute second news broke that fighting had resumed between Israel and Hezbollah and Iran started threatening the Strait of Hormuz again, the market reacted instantly. Boom. Crude oil prices spiked right back over that $80 mark.
And here is the really wild reality of the global market. The Strait of Hormuz doesn't even need to be fully physically closed to impact prices. Just the fear, just the rumor of Iranian naval mines being deployed is enough to spook everybody. It triggers this massive chain reaction. The fear alone leads to spiking insurance premiums for shipping companies. That automatically increases overall freight costs. All of this general market nervousness means the total cost of importing crude oil shoots up, and you better believe those costs are inevitably passed right down the supply chain to the consumer. Part 5. The road ahead in Switzerland. Can peace last? So all of these incredibly volatile moving parts are colliding right as we approach the end of the 60-day window. You've got the threats in the Strait, the active fighting in Lebanon, the spiking oil prices, and those crucial permanent talks are scheduled to take place in Switzerland. Now, historically, Switzerland has served as the ultimate neutral ground, right? It's that safe venue where opposing global powers, even those with deeply, deeply conflicting interests, can sit across the table and attempt to hammer out long-term, permanent agreements totally away from the battlefield. But man, the agenda waiting for negotiators in Switzerland is monumental. They are tasked with finalizing a permanent deal between the U.S. and Iran, definitively preventing a wider regional war, somehow resolving the deep-seated tensions regarding Hezbollah in Lebanon, and tackling the insanely complex issue of long-term sanctions relief for Iran. But, and this is the absolute biggest caveat of all, the success of these talks relies entirely on whether the temporary MOU can even survive the current outbreak of violence long enough for the negotiators to take their seats. Which leaves us with this final, really profound question. Will there actually be a permanent deal in Switzerland after these 60 days? Can a fragile, temporary peace agreement really withstand the completely opposing strategic agendas of the Middle East's biggest powers? The clock is ticking loudly, the entire world is watching, and the outcome here is going to shape global security and economics for years to come. Thank you so much for joining me for this analysis. Keep your eyes on the headlines and, as always, keep asking the big questions.